So I just want to start by saying something that you're probably tired of hearing, but that is congratulations. You just graduated from college, which, even though it may not feel like it now, is a really big deal. I graduated from college over 20 years ago, and I think I can honestly say, after working with UMBC students for the past 3 years, undergraduate students today are expected to work a lot harder than I had to work when I was an undergraduate. And I really mean that. Regardless of how you're feeling about your future or whatever, I really do hope you take a moment to step back and really celebrate what you've done and acknowledge your accomplishments. Having said that, I want to acknowledge that a lot of you are really, really scared of the future. And not just regular old, I'm a college grad and I'm afraid of my future fear, but real panic and worry about the future of the job market in this country. I'm hearing from a lot of you, the job market sucks, there's not enough jobs and too many applicants, and it's only getting worse, right? I don't care who you support or what your politics are. It is just objectively true that the Trump administration's policies are injecting insane amounts of uncertainty in the future. The tariffs and the trade war and the stock market, which is definitely trending down. And, they basically fired scientists all over the place. They've reduced funding for science at universities and research institutions. If you're afraid, I really want to affirm and validate that. However, this video is not going to be a negative rant. I really want to try to throw out some positive thoughts to maybe encourage you, maybe give you some wisdom. Now, before I do that, I want to say I try not to give advice to people. Generally speaking, I don't know what it's like to be you. I haven't had your joys and your struggles and your sorrows and your celebrations, right? I don't think I have the right to tell you what you should do. However, I have experienced some things related to what you're going through, and I just want to share some things I've learned from it. To get really specific, in May 2022, I was working as an educational supervisor at a school inside of a maximum security prison. Not the most prestigious job, but a job that paid pretty decently. For reasons I'm not going to go into here, I suddenly lost that job. My wife at the time was also between jobs, so I went from making a pretty decent salary to making nothing. Add to this that I have a partner and a kid and a mortgage, and it was really, really, really scary. But despite all that, I learned some really valuable lessons that I want to share with you that hopefully you can glean some wisdom from. Lesson number 1 is create a daily routine. We human beings generally don't do well with day after day after day after day of no structure, right? So you should really think about creating some structure for yourself. For example, making sure you're in bed by a certain time every night, making sure you're up out of bed by a certain time every day, even if you have nothing specific to do, not staying up till 3 a.m. playing video games and sleeping until 11, right? That's fine every once in a while, right? But every day, you're going to get really depressed and feel sorry for yourself really quickly. Additionally, think about building healthy routines that help you, physically, spiritually, mentally, or all of the above. I meditate multiple times a day. That is a daily routine that is an anchor in my life. For some of you, that could be exercise. It could be yoga. It could be going out in nature and taking a walk. It could be journaling. Whatever it is, it's important to have things that you're kind of doing on a regular basis. Maybe not every single day, but some way to kind of structure your life so you're not just spiraling into sadness. The second thing I learned is don't be afraid to take a crap job. So when I was unemployed, and what I'm about to tell you is not a joke, I ended up getting hooked up with this company that does very short-term, low-level tech jobs. For example, and again, this is not a joke, I installed a touchscreen kiosk at a Panda Express in East Baltimore County, I swear. At one point, I was sent to fix a copy machine at a CVS in Dundalk that prints photos or whatever. Here I am, some guy with a PhD trying to fix a copier, right? I mean, that's not very prestigious, but I did it. It got me some money. It gave me something to do, and it really helped. So, sometimes having a job, any job, even one that is, beneath you or one that you don't really like or care about, is better than having absolutely no job. Number 3, pursue your passions, especially the things that you really care about that you often didn't have time for when you were a student. I often have conversations with students where I find out that they're really, really good at something. Maybe they're a great artist. Maybe they make music. Maybe they love dance. And I find out that their major is engineering or computer science or something. And I always ask them why didn't you just major in this if this is something you care about and you're good at? And I already know what they're going to say because they always say the same thing. My parents told me that all the jobs are in STEM, so that's why I'm a STEM major. Well, guess what, Mom and Dad? Your advice is maybe not looking so great right now, is it? All right, no shade to parents. I'm a parent. Being a parent's hard, but still, sometimes adults tell us things and those things turn out to be not completely true. Regardless, a lot of you have large chunks of time that you didn't have before Maybe this is a really good opportunity to explore those passions. Now, why? Well, one, it brings you joy. Two, you can develop a sense of like well-being and accomplishment by continuously getting better at something, which is like a transferable job skill that you can bring to any career. And three, I think like more than half of my friends who went to college aren't even doing what they majored in college, including myself. Sometimes pursuing your creative passions can lead to something else that you never imagined, something that maybe doesn't make you as much money, but actually makes you happier. Number four is a little philosophical. Assess your values and ask yourself, what do I really care about? So that might feel like very abstract, so let me explain what I mean. Do a little thought experiment with me. Imagine an elderly person who is going to die any day. They're on their deathbed, they're reflecting on their life. Here is something that almost none of those people say. Oh, I wish I had less fun and joy in my life and took fewer vacations and went into the office more. I don't want to minimize the importance of, work and career and money. Those things are important. My career and my work are very important to me, and I'm not trying to downplay that. But there are bigger issues in life that relate directly to the question of what does it mean to be a human? If you ask anybody from a little kid up to a college graduate, what do you want to be when you grow up? The answer is almost always something like a doctor, a teacher, an engineer, an artist. All those things are great, but why doesn't anybody ever say, for example, I want to be a more loving person when I grow up. I want to be a deeply empathetic and kind person regardless of how ugly and hateful the world gets. I want to do something with my life that impacts people in a profound way. Maybe we should start answering questions like that with those types of answers, right? Because, there's just so much more to being human than what job you do. And you're at a really critical and crucial time in your life when you're really kind of solidifying the values that you're going to carry through adulthood. And I think thinking about those questions now could potentially put you on a much better path than quite frankly, most adults my age are on. All right, 2 more points. This next one is going to sound really bizarre to some of you, but hear me out. Learn how to suffer. I think the best way to introduce this concept is with a quote. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive. James Baldwin. What a hero this man is to me. This is a man who suffered incredibly, lived through some of the worst periods of American history, experienced persecution and oppression as a Black man before, during, and after the Civil Rights era, but drew such wisdom and humanity and just brilliance from his suffering and put that into books that I read in grad school, which completely changed my life. So here's the deal. A lot of you are suffering right now. And I know as Americans, we don't even like the word suffering, right? We hate suffering so much that we have entire policies, entire political parties that are built around the idea that if you're poor and struggling and suffering, well, it's your fault, which is 99.8% bullshit, right? We all suffer, and a lot of people have suffered brilliantly and beautifully and have left behind wisdom that can change your life if you go looking for it. So if you want to learn how to suffer well, learn from people who have suffered well, like James Baldwin, etc. Okay, final points. Channel your anger in a positive direction. A lot of people are angry right now, and I think that's totally appropriate. Life in America is going to be harder for most of us going forward because so many things that many of us have come to depend on, so many freedoms that we thought we had, opportunities we thought we had, are slowly being deconstructed. And that should piss you off. Anger is kind of like energy. Energy is neither good nor bad. It just is, and it can be used for good or bad things, right? We can use energy to destroy or to create. You could move from anger to hatred, or you could move from anger to action. So quite frankly, if you're angry, think about getting active. I'm not going to tell you what that looks like for you, but here are a few suggestions. Maybe getting active means volunteering your time for a local nonprofit that's doing work that you believe. That's especially important now because the Trump administration is really making it increasingly hard to be a small nonprofit in America because it's just cutting grants left and right. Maybe getting active means volunteering for a local politician's campaign or something. Or maybe getting active means making a damn protest sign and going out in these streets and making some noise. Look, real talk, what's happening now is beyond just liberal and conservative, right? What's happening now is about authoritarianism versus democracy and freedom. History has shown again and again that authoritarians do not stop until they are stopped, typically by large-scale social movements. I know some of you are saying, I literally can't go to protests because my parents won't let me, or I'm undocumented, or I am documented, and I'm paying attention to the news and seeing that even people from other countries with documentation are getting deported. Again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. These are suggestions, but there are things that you can do to channel your anger in a positive direction. So find out what those things are and freaking do them. Your future is probably going to be much harder than mine was when I was your age. And if you're angry about it, then please do something about it. Anyway, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. If you did, leave a comment. If you didn't, please leave a comment. I really do try to respond to all my comments. It sometimes takes me a few days, but it's summertime and I'm done with classes, so I'll be a little more available. Thank you all so much for watching.